Today I'm taking a look at Tainted Grail, the Fall of Avalon, which is an action RPG, and to me it plays much like Skyrim with a few elements of The Witcher thrown in. The game is in early access, has been for a while. I'm going to let you know now, I did receive a Steam key for free, and they have promised to send me a deluxe edition. However, I've signed no sort of contract, I'm getting no monetary benefit from this. I don't have to send this off for any sort of preview for editing or anything like that. This is all completely my own opinion from my own playthrough. Starting with character creation, we got some preset choices. It's pretty bog standard, I would say. Nothing special here, pretty normal. There are no sliders for anything about character creation, a couple of body types. You give yourself a name and you start the game. You start in jail. And the first few dialogue choices actually give you some benefits, bonuses to certain stats, which are told to you. Kind of nice. It's not the first time I've seen this sort of thing, but I do kind of like it. And at the end of the day, your beginning stats don't matter too much, because once you start playing, you can level up any stat you want. One thing I like about the starting area, I'm not going to show a whole playthrough of it or anything, is that if you turn right, it's a very small area, but it starts to introduce you using the environment really about how the game works. There's a cooking station, there's something you can read to give you some recipes, there's a few materials around, ingredients nearby, some lockpicks and a lock to pick as well. Pretty standard way of starting. The combat is pretty similar to Skyrim. You've got two hands, you can wield a shield, a sword, two-handed sword, a magic. There's stamina to be used as a resource. I mean, stamina isn't Skyrim specific, I get that, but I mean, just the way it looks, it does look like Skyrim. And I do find at the start of the game, this stamina resource is pretty punishing. It takes a bit of time to get used to, but once you've started to level up more and you get some better stats, basically you get a bit more stamina and stamina regen. It's not as bad. I tried to continue the time-honored tradition of Skyrim and playing as a stealth archer. However, it's not as easy as it was in Skyrim. Enemies weren't dying as quickly, unfortunately, and I didn't have very many arrows to begin with, which then really necessitated me getting used to melee combat a little bit. And this does mean that I had to switch weapons, but it's quite easy. Press Q, a radial menu comes up, and you can switch pretty fast. Time doesn't stop completely when you are switching weapons, but it does slow down really a lot, and it slows down enough. You can switch weapons without problems. Aside from combat, I've already mentioned one, there were crafting stations, of which I did seem to use cooking fires the most. One thing I like is that each skill has its own level, and using this skill increases your experience in it, and it goes up in levels. And to me, that just makes sense. You get better at something when you do it more. And aside from just leveling up your skill, when you do level up your skill, you get a bit better at something, you get a tiny bit of experience towards your character level as well. And that's really nice. It really encourages you to be practicing your skills as much as possible. If you could see my character running around the world, it's a bit silly because I'm evading, dodging around all the time, or was. So my evasion skill is going up and up and up and up, just as I'm just walking between one house and another, one town and another. But you can also just be jumping around the whole time, sneaking around. You can constantly be leveling something up. So I'm constantly being rewarded and getting those lovely endorphins in my brain. Now, to level up proper, you do need to get a certain amount of experience, but then you need to rest. And one way of resting is to set a campfire or find a campfire. And this is what reminded me of The Witcher, because when you set up your own sort of campfire, bonfire outside, it's not just about leveling up. You can, if you use a certain in-game item, essentially it's a type of currency, I suppose, you can use it to do other things, such as identify unidentified items, or do some alchemy, which really reminds me of The Witcher as well, or even fast travel. Normally for fast travel, you have to go to like a fast travel point, a waypoint, and then you can travel to the other waypoints, but by spending this in-game currency, you can just do it from a bonfire. I kind of like this because it means you're not really tied down to a particular settlement. Not that there are a lot of settlements in Act 1 anyway, but you can do most of what you want to do on the go. And if you level up certain perks, certain skill points, you can start to even craft arrows and armor and weapons at campfires if you so wished. The difference between night and day is, well, night and day. During the day, everything is pretty normal and bright, you can see, no problems. But at night, anything outside of a few protected areas gets overtaken by mysterious force. When I say anything, I do mean like NPCs, and even like animals, wolves that are running around. And you can see if you're there at the right time, that your average sort of peasant outside looks like they're being possessed by something. All of a sudden they're a bit harder to kill, but then these possessed creatures, they will drop unidentified items. They will drop the item you need to identify items or fast travel or do alchemy at your waypoint. Also at night, there are some particularly strong monsters that come out. I'll get to those later. As for leveling up, so when you level up your character, you pick one of 6 attributes to increase. These are strength, dexterity, endurance, spirituality, practicality, and perception. As a stealth archer, I really needed a mixture of those stats. So strength gave me more stamina, which means I could fire off more arrows or be able to use a stronger a stronger bow, but then dexterity directly affects how much damage I did with the bow. Endurance is needed by everyone, just so you have some health. And then I had a few points in perception to increase my sneak damage and critical hit chance and critical hit damage. And I really had to think hard about what stat to increase, plus each attribute affected other stats. And some items had a minimum stat requirement anyway. At each level up, there are also skill trees, which you can invest 1 point into each level. And there are loads of different skill trees. So this really lets you pick and choose or specialize in anything that you want. And it's really difficult to make choices in the first few levels because there are things that affect like crafting, how much money you make when you sell items, how much health you've got, how much damage you do. It's really hard at the beginning, but after a while, it did get a little bit easier to pick and choose once I had a few like minimum or basic things that I wanted for my character. And if you make a mistake, fear not. There is a potion in the game that lets you respec your attribute and skill points. Thankfully, your skill levels are unaffected. These potions weren't too common. I think I found about 4 by the end of Act 1. And I did use one eventually so I could capture some gameplay just to show off some magic. It was about level 20 that I switched from being a stealth archer to using magic. And I found it far easier being a mage than a stealth archer. And I think one of the reasons for this is I put loads of my attribute points just into spirituality because only one stat affects magic. Whereas even if I was just playing like a two-handed swordsman, I need endurance, I need strength because that affects melee damage. Whereas as a mage, I was just like spirituality, 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 and maybe every now and again one in endurance. Now as a mage, I did put a few points into practicality, which helps reduce mana costs also. And I found that by the time I'd finished all the available quests, I was pretty overpowered for the area that I was in. Literally just running around one-hit killing most enemies with magic. Some enemies required more than one hit with a magic spell, with one particular exception being a strong enemy that comes out at night, who are just so much faster, tougher, and deal more damage than all the other enemies in the game. But on the other hand, I got more experience for killing them. Towards the beginning of the game, I think I managed to kill one at quite a low level, but it required loads of my potions and consumables and food to heal me. By the end, I was taking on 4, 5, 6 of them in one go, without breaking too much of a sweat. They would still do a bit of damage if they hit me, but yeah, not too bad. And I do think, at least on normal difficulty, which I was playing, that you could use these to grind levels, because when you can rest, and you can choose when you rest until, so you could just rest until the next night, run around, kill these enemies, level up and get stronger and stronger. One thing to keep in mind is we've only got access to Act 1 of 3 at the moment, and I got my magic skill up to the 80s. Also keep in mind, I didn't start using magic until I was like level 20 something. I'm not sure what the maximum level for skill is, but my gamer instincts and senses tell me it's going to be 100. I think the world is quite well built. There are lots of secrets to find, enemies to fight, locations to explore, books to read, and the books have got a good chunk of text inside, which really helps build up the lore of the world. And we are really incentivized to explore, not just for like the purpose of exploring and finding something new, but you get a bunch of experience for finding new places. There are shrines dotted around that you can pray at, and you get experience just for finding them. It's really nice to get these small rewards for doing things. And it did give me an idea afterwards, maybe I'll go and check it in another video, that once you get to the Act 1, and you can start in Act 1 once you've got there on a new game, you could run around finding all the new places and getting a bunch of experience before fighting anything, which would probably make the beginning of the game a bit easier, I imagine. This would also help open up lots of fast travel points, which is nice. Aside from the shrines I mentioned, there are hidden chests to dig up. Some of them you find underwater, and there are NPCs dotted around, some of which give quests, some are merchants, some are a bit mysterious and a bit weird. So yeah, it was nice. There was always something new to find, and just kind of running around didn't feel like a waste of time. Right, onto the items themselves and a bit about crafting. So there are quite a few special weapons and armor that can be found. Not so many that can be crafted, but one thing I do like about the crafting is that you can put your materials that you find into a stash, which is accessible from a few different areas in the world. And when you get to a crafting station though, it will use the materials from your stash, which I absolutely love. So you don't have to go running to your stash, pick up the items, run back to the crafting station. And when you craft items, there's a chance that you will create an item with a bonus. Also, that it could be a bit worse than what you want to make. But the higher your skill level is, the more likely you are to get items with a higher bonus. And you also get the chance to add more of an ingredient to change the chances of getting higher quality items. And I'm not just talking about weapons and armor here. This does also apply to cooking when you're making food for healing, and also alchemy skills for making potions. The kind of armor you're wearing is determined by the combined weight of all the pieces of equipment you are wearing, not including your weapons. And if you go over certain thresholds, you'll go from what is classified as light armor to medium and then onto wearing heavy armor, each of which has certain changes to some of your stats. Heavier pieces of armor do tend to have higher armor ratings. But you can also increase the threshold for moving on from one class of armor to the next by increasing your strength or picking particular skills. Overall, I like this system because it lets you customize your armor without worrying about what type of armor a particular item is. There's also a crafting station that lets you modify your equipment by either upgrading it from like +1 to +2. You can add a slot to it and you can put things in those slots, or another example is making your armor lighter. So there really is a lot of possible customization in the game when you take into account the items, crafting, attributes and skill points. The quests are pretty standard though. Go kill this person, go to speak to that person, craft me this, bring me a certain number of these items. Thankfully I didn't manage to find an escort quest, that would have been probably the worst. On a positive note for the quests, there were times where there were choices to be made that would directly affect the next part of the game. These were linked to the main quest, but the side quests didn't really stand out to me that much because they weren't really linked to my character. It's the same odd thing we have in lots of RPGs where you're walking around, speaking to someone random in a tavern, and then an NPC is like, oh, go and find this hidden thing for me underwater. Oh, go clear out this house for me. I'm just a completely random person, and some people are giving me fairly menial tasks, whereas other people are asking me to outright commit murder, which is just a bit extreme when you think about it. I did manage to acquire a horse, seemingly the only one in the whole of Act 1. I also got a pet, but neither of them came from a quest. I'm not going to say more about them. Perhaps if I'm going to make more videos on this game, I'll give more details there. Alright, it's time for my final thoughts. Overall, I really did enjoy the experience of the game so far. This is on patch 0.9, and this is because the world was filled with lots of details. I really liked the progression system, where there are loads of choices to make for your character and leveling them up. And there will be loads of possible builds. On top of this, I really also liked that I was pretty much constantly leveling something up. So I felt rewarded just by being in the game. Although, as I said earlier, if you could see me in third person, it might look a bit weird that I'm either literally running everywhere, jumping everywhere, sneaking everywhere, or evading everywhere. Hey ho. I also like that there were loads of items to pick up to use in the game that I could use for crafting. So it means that searching boxes, crates, bags, etc. is actually a worthwhile process because you know you're going to be finding ingredients for your next set of meals for healing or for your potions or whatever it is that you're making. I didn't mention it earlier, but I do like that enemies respawn after some time, so the world doesn't feel completely empty. However, when it comes to caves and dungeons and things, no, enemies didn't respawn in them. So once I'd cleared most of the quests, I mean, I know we normally would be moving on to Act 2, but there's not much else to do. Crafting system is pretty much good enough, but I was mostly just using it for food in the end. I would kind of like it if there was some sort of legendary item or items that I could craft by using some hard to get or unique materials, make a choice with items as well. And moving on to things I didn't like so much, I did find the early game to be lacking in different spells and arrows, and I really had to rely on melee combat than I wanted to for my first character. So when I'm picking things to be an archer and I've only got 15 arrows and they get used up in about 3 enemies, I can't be an archer. I want to be a mage, but all I've got is a simple fire spell. That's all I'm doing. So the first few levels are kind of rough. By the end of Act 1, I'm completely steamrolling enemies. And I get it, we should be getting stronger, but I felt like I got to that point maybe a bit too early. Like the difference between the start and end of Act 1 is massive. Now I was playing on normal difficulty, but so maybe on harder difficulties, the enemies wouldn't get easy as quickly, but it would make the beginning more difficult. So the enemies do get progressively harder for a bit, but then they stop. And then I'm like getting stronger and stronger, but they're staying still. I hope that once we get to Act 2, that kind of the enemies catch up a bit to give me a bit more challenge. One small thing I would like changed is when I'm going to a merchant and trying to sell some items, I can't select more than one item at a time. So click on an item, and if I've got more than one of it, it wants me to confirm how many I'm doing. So I'm clicking and confirming, clicking and confirming, clicking and confirming. I just want to select a whole collection of items and just be like, yep, sell. I have read that some people have had performance issues with the game if you're reading reviews online. I can't say that I did at all. And I did find that most of these reviews were written quite a while ago. I think they've actually patched it out for the most part. But the game did crash 2, maybe 3 times in the 22-ish hours that I've played. That's not the end of the world, but it is annoying. Game shouldn't hopefully be crashing. Thankfully, you can set the game to autosave every 3 minutes if you wish, which is what I did. So when I did end up crashing, I actually barely lost any time whatsoever. So just yet. It's not the end of the world, but I'd really rather it didn't happen at all. And one final pet peeve of mine is they spelled Camelot with a K. That might have been cool when I was 12 years old, but when they're setting this in the world of King Arthur, we've got Avalon, Merlin is mentioned at some point, there's Galahad, all the characters that you would expect, and everything else is spelt the normal way, and all of a sudden Camelot with a K. To me, I think that's a bit silly. It's just not that cool, that with a K. So if you like action RPGs, I would say it's probably worth a go. It's still in early access, as I said. When they eventually release it, your save will be deleted. That's already known. So, you know, the character that I've made so far isn't going to be there when the game finally comes out. But overall, yeah, I really did enjoy it. Is it perfect? No. You let me know what you think of the game from what I've shown you and told you. Have you tried it yourself? What did you like? What didn't you like? Thank you to all the members of my channel, for watching, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next one.